We're back with the Politics Fix with NBC News political director Chuck Todd. He's also White House correspondent, chief White House correspondent for NBC News, and Steve Kornacki of the New York Observer, a fine newspaper. Chuck, I want you to start with this. If you are a moderate Democrat, somebody fighting for re-election next year, let's say Evan Bayh in Indiana, which is a conservative state, or Blanche Lincoln down in Arkansas, which went heavily for John McCain just last November. Are you more worried about your re-election chances after reading the returns this morning?
You are, because you saw not only, I always say, look at how John Corzine lost. He had all the money in the world. He had a weak Republican challenger, or a flawed Republican challenger. Weak's unfair, but he had a flawed Republican challenger. He had he was in a state where the president was popular. He had all the help he could ask for from the White House, and he still couldn't get over the finish line. He even had a third-party candidate taking votes away from the Republican challenger. So everything that you could possibly have in a bad environment, and Corzine was in his own bad environment, he had it all going for him, and he still came up short. That would be what would concern me as a Democratic lawmaker sitting in a swing district. Now, I asked the exact question you asked me to David Axelrod, the chief political advisor here in the White House, and he immediately said, hey, look at the special election. That's a Democrat who embraced the president. And you know what? The 2010 elections are going to get nationalized. They will be a referendum on this White House, and that'll excite voters, and we'll take the lead. We'll play more offense. So I think they're in this sense of sort of like, bring it on. It's almost like a page from the Bush playbook of 2002, Chris.
Well, Steve, that's the question. If you're somebody who's on the line and has to vote for health care, which can be perceived in conservative states as being too much big government, too much tax heavy, too much influence in your life. Does this, what happens yesterday, make it even harder to vote for health care if you're Blanche Lincoln in Arkansas?
Well, again, it depends what example you're going to look at, because you could look up at the 23rd District in New York and you could see a Democratic candidate who endorsed the basic idea of the public option, the most controversial aspect of health care reform, and he won in a district that the Democrats
Chuck Schumer's going to vote for health care. I'm not worried about him. I'm worried about people in states that are not that blue.
But the profile of that district where the Democrat won is very Republican. Not since 1870 whatever has a Democrat won there. But I think there's an inevitability also to what happened yesterday that was sort of set in motion when Barack Obama won last year. We can talk about the New Jersey example and its significance nationally. I don't think it was the best possible environment for John Corzine, given, the bad economic conditions and all that. The best possible environment for John Corzine would have been if John McCain won last year, because Democrats in a state like New Jersey and other blue states have been insulated for the last decade and a half by the Republicans in Washington being in power. And it's uncanny, if you look at New Jersey for the last decade and a half, the ceiling Republican candidates have had there.
Let me give you a perfect example, Chuck. Creed Deeds is the most conservative of the Democrats running for that gubernatorial race. More conservative than Brian Moran, more conservative than Terry McAuliffe.
More conservative than Mark Warner, Tim Kaine. We'll go right down the line.
And he gets his butt handed to him by 18 points. If I'm a Southern Democrat, I'm saying, wait a minute, Creed Deeds is me. 18 points he gets blasted away by McDonough, who is not that strong a candidate. I'm telling you, well, I'm asking you, isn't that a threat to Blanche Lincoln, to Mark Pryor, to Mary Landrieu, to Ben Nelson, to even to Evan Bayh?
Well, look, the guys on the ballot in 10, Blanche Lincoln, Evan Bayh, they're actually on the ballot, so let's use those two examples. When you look at that Virginia turnout, what should scare them is sort of like, okay, boy, when Obama's not on the ballot, that coalition of young voters, African Americans, Hispanics, they don't show up. We've now got a couple of examples, and look, it's anecdotal. We had that Georgia Senate runoff in late 2008 when the president's name disappeared from the ballot. So did his vote. Now we had Virginia. President's name disappeared from the ballot. Now look, extenuating circumstances. Creed Deeds turned out to run an awful campaign. He never said what he was for, never said who he was. But the White House acknowledged, Axelrod acknowledged to me, look, that turnout was a concern, and they believe that when the president is at the forefront, if they nationalize the elections in 2010, if he's on the road, then that will get African Americans out, that will get young voters out. That's what I'm guessing he's going to be telling Blanche Lincoln behind the scenes. Hey, look, I'm going to fight. I'm going to get all this stuff. And Nancy Pelosi is going to say, look what I did in that upstate New York district.
Okay, we'll be right back to talk about how the far right looked last night. It looked to me like they got their block handed to them up in upstate New York. Interesting things. The country may be moving a bit to the right. I don't think they like the far right. Steve Kornacki, Chuck Todd will be right back. We're back with NBC's Chuck Todd and Steve Kornacki of the New York Observer. Chuck, what's the silver lining? You were alluding to it coming out of the White House from Axelrod. What are they looking at positively from last night?
Oh, I don't think they're looking at, look, they're trying to make New York 23 a positive. That's a tough thing to say. I'll say this. I think they can now go to a blue dog and say, look, if you're in a tough fight, you can at least know we have a good campaign operation. Look at what we were able to do in that New York 23. And I think that they have a fair argument on that front. I think if you look at the silver lining, if you're a Democrat on the outside of this White House and you're seeing how they're reacting today, they made the decision to own the election. They're saying they're not, but notice that they put Robert Gibbs on your program.
Yeah.
Axelrod is doing all that. They made the decision, you know what, they do have to own this. It was almost as if they woke up and said, yes, yes, you're right, we're the head of the Democratic Party, and on a night like this, we can't pretend these races didn't matter.
Right, you don't vote, nobody votes for a rabbit.
That's right.
You know, you got to stand up. I think, Steve, I think that stand-up thing is a good move for them. Just take it on the chin this time and come back. What do you think about the silver lining? Is there one for the D's? For the President's Party?
Is. I think you have to look at the long view. If you take the long view on this and you're not thinking about right now and you're even not necessarily thinking about 2010 and you accept the reality of you control the White House, you control the House, you control the Senate, and unemployment is going to hit 10% any day now. If you accept that reality, then you were going to lose in 2009 and you're going to lose seats in 2010. But if you take the long view, there's such a thing as you look at the Republicans as losing by winning. And the Republicans are going to have this success. You're starting to see it today. You'll see it next year when the Republicans pick up seats of reading too much and reading the wrong lessons into basically a position where they just sat back and let inevitability, take its course. Have they changed themselves at all since the 2006 and 2008 elections in terms of their image? No. So what happens when the economy comes roaring back? If it does, that's the assumption the Democrats are making. And I think then Obama and the Democrats are sitting in a very good position because the Republicans didn't take advantage of this opportunity to redefine themselves as a party.
Kornacki, you drink my coffee, sir. That was faster than anything I've ever said in my life. Chuck, is health care on its way out this year? Has it still got a chance this year?
It has to happen this year. I think if this thing delays next year, it's dead. I think they can't afford to let it go. It is one of those things they're going to. That's why I think you saw Harry Reid walk back that comment when it got leaked out. I think it's
thank you.
It's
now or never.
Dead
thank you.
If
I think
it
there was a song called that. It's now or never.
Now or never.
All right. Thank you, Chuck Todd. Thank you, Steve Kornacki.